Welcome to the Movie Potluck Podcast, the podcast where you never know what dish the guys are bringing to the party. Movie reviews of the films that might have slipped right off your plate and gotten snatched up by Grandma's mean old poodle. Behind the scenes info that might just have that secret ingredient you've been craving all day. Special guests, surprise interviews, a lot of laughs, and much, much more. Now, here's your host, Big Bear Joe and Bigger T.
It's time once again after a little bit of hiatus for the Movie Potluck Podcast. Big Bear Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. We're back from outer space.
That's right. That's right. Back from outer space, ready, man, ready to talk about a little bit of a different type of movie than we've done before, but a really good movie. It's one of my personal favorites, and I suggested it to you, and you watched it, and you ended up liking it too. We're gonna talk about Midnight Special
Yeah.
by one of my.
Here's the thing, man. Every time you suggest a movie, I like it. It hasn't gone both ways. And
just barely.
Yeah, there's some movies that we pretty much like. We will say them at the same time. We need to do this movie.
Yeah.
But this movie was completely off my radar. I mean, it's a Jeff Nichols movie, an Arkansas guy, which I love, but I had no idea this movie existed. And you were like, hey, let's do this movie. You love it. I watched it with my nephew who's about to turn 15 in like a week. He loved it. I loved it all the way around.
Yeah.
For sure.
And we'll talk more about Jeff Nichols and his connections to Arkansas and things like that here in a minute.
Yeah.
But folks, this is a great movie. It's really worth watching. So we'll talk about it. We'll try not to give any spoilers, and all that kind of thing. So one of our goals here with the Movie Potluck is we're bringing a dish that maybe you've never tried before.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you've never tasted, never seen. And this is one that didn't get a lot of publicity and all that kind of stuff. But I promise you, especially with some of the background we're going to tell you on it, and as me and I think Joey can testify to this as we talk about it. Once we talked about it, and he went on a deep dive and some of the YouTube videos out there about it. When you know some of the background and why Nichols wrote this movie, it brings it to life. It really does. And so, it's one of those that it's a thinker too. So, y'all get ready for the potluck. It's a Movie Potluck Podcast with Big Bear Joe and Bigger T. Y'all ready to eat? Y'all, it's time for the potluck. Here comes the dish. Here it comes, out the casserole dish, baby, out of there. We're getting the serving spoons ready. Here you go. Get your plates ready. Today we're talking about Midnight Special from director and writer Jeff Nichols. Joey, I think the only movie you've seen of his, right? We were just talking about is Mud.
Right.
Which is a famous, great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Filmed here in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, for those of y'all, a lot of folks that know us, we're from Arkansas, and so it's filmed here. Jeff Nichols grew up outside of Little Rock, so a lot of his movies are based in the South, things like that. Now he's also known for, probably his other big time movie is Loving, the story of the first interracial couple. It's a true story, based on a true story, and it got those Mud and that one got a lot of publicity for him, right?
Yeah.
Didn't McConaughey win some kind of award for Mud?
Yeah, I think so. And actually, in Loving, I think the lead actually got nominated for an Oscar too.
Yeah.
So that again, those two put him on the map. So,
and I really like Mud a lot. Okay, and so and I like the fact, and hearing about it, I started they had Arkansas, had some kids from Arkansas in it, had some people from Arkansas. I actually met a kid that was one of the kind of extras in one of the scenes, had a couple lines and stuff like that in it. And the fact that they filmed it down in the Delta,
right.
Matthew McConaughey and Reese Witherspoon stayed in the hotel, out in that area, whatever and stuff. So it was interesting. So after I watched it, and it's kind of a Tom Sawyer story, so it's kind of neat. Well, uh, I did a deep dive on Jeff Nichols. Okay, and I've watched every one of his movies, Joey. Watched every one of them. He started off with one called Shotgun Stories, which was
Hmm.
filmed here in Arkansas, filmed in around Lone Oak in England, Arkansas, and just his movies are just gritty and real. Okay,
Hmm.
just very gritty, very real. And did another one called Take Shelter, which is
Hmm.
sort of a um uh, very interesting, very good movie. And then there's been some others, but and then I ran across this Midnight Special, and uh, and it was different. Now this one stars um, a guy you and I both really like, and I guess Jeff Nichols likes him because he
We
puts him
we
in
we
all his
we
movies.
we fanboy out about him. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's Michael Shannon.
yeah.
Talk about Michael Shannon a little bit, Joe.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I've have seen anything that he's been in that I haven't loved. And he's one of them guys again. He's in so much stuff, but a lot of people will be like, Michael Shannon, who is that? And then you're like, it's that guy right there, like, oh yeah, that guy. And
Yeah.
I think he's been in every single Jeff Nichols movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I wouldn't say he disappears into roles necessarily. Um, but he just I'm trying to think of a way to describe him. He becomes so much of the story, and it's not so much about him so much a lot of times, you know what I'm saying? To
Hmm.
where it's like he sticks out like a sore thumb. You're like he blends into the story so well.
Hmm.
And you can ask anything of him. It's like, I mean, it's like the latest one where it's the bike rider movie of Jeff
Yeah.
Nichols. He's a bike. It's like, I
Yeah.
mean, some people know Michael Shannon from, the Elvis Nixon movie he did, and it's really
Hmm.
outrageous because he was the star of that, and they're saying,
Superman's dad.
yeah,
Wasn't he
exactly,
Superman's dad in that one of the
yeah.
recent
So
Supermans?
yeah, and but and like we talked about, he was in like the night before Christmas or whatever. I think Seth Rogen movie or whatever. Just again, there's just you look at his IMDb and it's just like there's like 90 things,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And it kind of similarly, the other guy in the movie, Joel Edgerton, is kind of
Edgerton.
sort of like that. Hadn't been in as many things as Michael
Hmm.
Shannon, but he's still kind of, you know, and,
And
and
this movie set him up good because he ended up becoming the star of Loving.
right,
And so this was kind of I think his first time working with I believe it, I may be wrong there, but I think it was his first time working with Jeff Nichols, and Jeff Nichols really liked him and used him. Another star in this one is Kristen Dunst.
yeah,
She
yeah,
plays the mother, Sarah, and Adam Driver's in this movie.
hmm,
This was not long after this came out, a little bit after he was in the Star Wars movies and kind of
hmm,
got famous. So it was big for him to get him, which Adam Driver's another guy that came from Arkansas, lived in Arkansas for a while. Um, Jaden Martle, sorry, I'm reading that wrong, is plays the child in this one. And
hmm,
he's been in some other movies. He was in the It movies, the
hmm,
recent versions of the It movies. Um, does a great job acting in this too.
hmm,
Does a great job acting in this. So there's some star power here. Okay, for there's some name actors here, some people that and there's some others you would recognize or whatever. But the idea of this movie, um, the story is about. I'll just kind of read you the synopsis here that IMDb has. It's real short. It says a father and son go on the run, pursued by the government and a cult, drawn to the child's special powers.
right,
So what happens is you have this child. He's the center of the whole story, and he's got some special powers.
Mhm.
And there's a group of people in Texas and San Angelo, Texas, that this cult that they see these powers and they start worshiping this or putting this child on a pedestal. I don't know if they're necessarily worshiping him, but they're worshiping the stuff that he tells them
Mhm.
because he's getting some messages and stuff. And so they're he's the center of their, their cult or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay. And um he has some, and this is a little bit of got a sci-fi tilt to it. That's why it's different than most of Jeff
Mhm.
Nichols stuff. He doesn't do anything with sci-fi. And that's what drew it to this, right, Joe?
Right. Mhm.
So it's got this, he's got some special powers. And his uh Michael Shannon's his dad.
Mhm.
Joe Edgerton is a former state trooper or a state trooper. I don't know if he's former or not. He's friends with Michael Shannon's character, Roy.
Mhm.
His name's Lucas in it, and he's helping. What they've done is they've kidnapped his own son from this cult, and they're taking him somewhere. That's where you kind of get at the beginning of the
Mhm.
movie, and you don't really know where they're taking him, but they have a destination, a goal that they're going to, a place that they're going to, and that's kind of the theme of the movie. Is they're trying to get this son to now. Along the way, they end up picking up the mom, Kristen Dunst. Somehow she's kind of pulled away maybe from the cult during this or something, and so she's not there anymore. You can tell they've been disenfranchised from the cult. The cult people are hunting them. The government's hunting them. Adam Driver is
Mhm.
part of the government that's hunting them also, and that's where he fits into the story. Um, we'll talk more about that, but I guess anything else on the synopsis you think we need to add there?
No, I think that's
That's good.
perfect. I think it's perfect, and uh, it's its basis. It's again, it's a chase movie,
Mm,
which that's the basis. So it's just getting chased by multiple groups of people. Which you start with that scenario, you can work a lot of stuff into a plot when you work a chase movie in there. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's some other things, but as far as the storytelling, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty good without giving away too much. So.
Now, and to give you a little back to understand this movie and to understand it better, you have to understand. I think it is good to go and listen to some of Jeff Nichols' interviews on where he's coming from and why he wrote this movie. Okay. And one of the things early on when I started watching this was an interview he did when he talked about his original idea. And he talked about when he was younger and he would go, I think, somewhere in Arkansas, he'd visit like grandma or something. And it was kind of in the Delta area outside of Little Rock. And that they would sometimes him and his friends would drive down an old road and they would uh, turn the lights off on their vehicle
Mhm.
and drive, see how far they could go without going into the ditch.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
almost a form of playing chicken,
Yeah,
right?
it's almost fun playing chicken. And if you grew up in the country, everybody did it.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
I did it growing up in Worcester, man. We did it. Right.
Right.
So he said he kind of pictured that in his head. He said he like pictured two men kind of doing that
Hmm.
in like an old car or something. He pictured it from his childhood. He pictured it in like an old, kind of an old car or whatever. And so he started thinking, okay, why would they be there? Why would they be doing that? And that was his original motivation
Hmm.
for writing this movie was, okay, why are they doing that?
Hmm.
Which is such a neat,
Right.
I don't know about you, Joe. I love that. I love hearing that insider info into the creative process.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
great to me. Another
Yeah, it's
important,
it's 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 almost, there's some people that write books where sometimes they'll start from the back and go, start from the
mm,
end and go back. But in that case, it's like he started in the middle. He's like, I start in the middle and I got to get
yep,
a story to get him there, and then I got to get a story to get him after. And
yeah,
that's almost unheard of,
yeah,
you
that's
know.
right. He's like, why are they running? And if you watch the movie, the way you put it is a perfect way to put it because it is kind of somewhere in the middle that you sort of see that connect.
Mhm.
But another thing in another interview I saw, and I saw this interview, I think after I watched it the first time, because after you watched it the first time, I think you were still, it's one of those movies that you got to sit and think about everything a little
Mhm.
bit, right?
Right.
And one of the things that helped me understand the movie better was him talking about the other reason, or the other motivation besides, but behind the big story of this movie. And that's one thing I love about this movie. When he was just before he wrote this movie, Jeff had his wife had their first child. And they brought this child home from the hospital, and he's a new father, which is, you and I don't have kids. We don't know what that's like, but
Mhm.
you can imagine that's a headsy thing, right? You got this new responsibility. You got to keep this human alive, you know.
Right.
And he said his child had what's a lot of children have at that age, had, febrile seizures,
Mhm.
and it scared them to death. And they had to take their child to the emergency room and to the doctor, and they were scared. And he said when he did that, he realized that there's some things in this life he wasn't going to be able to protect his child from.
Mhm.
And that when it comes down to it, the world is going to just kind of down the road he's going to protect, and he's going to be a good father, and he's going to do the things, but down the road the world's just going to kind of take your kids and do with it what
Mhm.
it does, and your child's going to end up making decisions and doing things. And so he just he's all those feelings started just coming to him as he went through that with his
Mhm.
child, right?
Mhm.
And so when you hear that story and you watch this movie, okay, because here it is, Michael Shannon's his father and Kristen Dunst is his mother, that know their child is special and
Mhm.
has some special powers. There's something special about him.
Mhm.
It's different. I mean, a group of people are living in a compound worshiping this kid, okay?
Mhm.
But they know that's not what he was made for. That's not what he was created for. He was created for something better than that. And so the whole movie is them trying to get him to what it is he's made for, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? What do you?
Yeah, I think it's perfect. Absolutely. And it's a lot of it's about trust.
Mm,
A lot of it's about letting go. A lot of it's about, like you said, that could translate, and like we talked about, just family members in general, friends, anybody you're close to, you really can't, necessarily just, carry them everywhere they go in life. They got to, stand on their own 2 feet. But it's almost like as he wrote this, he was processing through his own emotions at the time he was doing it.
mm,
It was almost like a cathartic moment. You could tell that, he's, coming to grips with it and dealing with it in his way and just putting it into words and writing a screenplay.
yeah. I think it's a movie that especially I think parents will connect with if you think about it in that way. I think if you're a parent, uh, and once again, we're not parents and we connect with it. I mean, just because we see that, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I think a parent will really, if you think about his motivation behind that, and the acting is so well done in it. And what you mentioned, and talk about this a little bit, the job that especially Shannon and Dunst and even Adam Driver and Joe Edinburgh,
Hmm.
it's almost like Nichols is directing them to do this, but about them saying so much without saying words.
Right. Yeah. There's a couple of moments. Michael Shannon, boy, he gives some looks sometimes that just will just you'll break your heart, right?
Mm,
And Kirsten at the end, towards the end of the movie, kind of has that too. And there's so much acting that's just in their face and without saying a word. And even sometimes, you know, I brought the scene where the little boy he just asked his dad. He's like, "Dad, are you scared?" And he just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, I'm scared." But you could see in his face the dad's scared, right?
mm,
There's some great actors that could deliver that line, but it's just like in his face. It's just like that's all you needed to see,
He
right?
didn't have to say it, did he?
They have said no.
Yeah.
So, and that's again, that's why one of the reasons why we love him,
Yeah.
and it's just like he just, it, I think the acting I think it's perfectly cast. I think Kirsten Dunst, there's a, she's been in some really big things. I
Mm,
think there's that, when you have somebody like that, there's a danger of somebody like that kind of taking over a movie, but she's actually plays kind of a backseat to, Shannon a little bit because you don't see her, as much, and it's a little bit later in the film. And in some ways, you can almost like where you're watching it going, oh yeah, that is Kirsten Dunst, isn't it? It
mm.
may take you a moment even, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's shot beautifully. I think it looks really good. I think, Jeff's a real particular person about he likes to shoot on film,
Mm,
which is what Tarantino does because his opinion is it looks more like the lived in world.
mm.
And I think that's why, all of his films have that lived in feel to it, and again, this one's a sci-fi twist to it. He's got other ones, like you said, that's, Mud's more like a, Tom Sawyer, and then there's Loving that's it's about civil rights. I mean, so
Yeah.
he's been around the board, but there's still, if you watch him, you're still like, this is a Jeff Nichols movie.
Yeah.
Like it has his thumbprint on it, right?
One of the things I love about Nichols in all his movies, okay,
Mm,
and this kind of a commercial for him, okay, and I'm fine to be that because
right.
but like the simple things like the houses the people live in,
Mm,
the cars they drive, it's the real stuff they would really drive.
right.
You know what I mean? Like it's not
Mm,
it's like it's very realistic. All his stuff is very realistic. They're
mm,
driving on roads that, like you can tell, I mean, it's the real deal. All his movies are that way.
mm,
Shotgun Stories, especially if you ever watch it, it's it's houses in the Delta, man. I mean, it's
mm,
houses, the vehicles that people drive in it. It's not some, uh, fixed up vehicle just for a movie. It's
mm,
it's not a prop car. They're just driving regular, they're just getting regular old vehicles off some used car lot somewhere to
mm.
drive in
Yeah.
these things. And so that's one thing I love about his movies, and this movie's that way. Um,
And
the,
I think that goes with his shooting style also,
mhm,
because a
yeah,
lot of directors have this thing, which again, this was his first studio movie.
mm,
This is the first one. It's actually, I think it's Warner Brothers. It's actually a studio film, right?
yeah,
So a lot of times there's this danger of, hey, I got a bigger budget, I got a studio movie, let's go over the top. And
yeah,
he doesn't do that. A lot of times, again, directors a lot of times will be like, let me show you what I'm capable of. Let me have this crazy camera angle or this crazy, this special effect or this or that or. And this movie just has just enough of the special effects that it needs to have to
mm,
tell the story, and just enough of the, again, just some of the stuff that the bare minimum that has to tell the story. And it's just not him just throwing things out there and saying, "Oh, you look at me, look what I can do." And it's like, no, it's just a story, right? He sticks to the story. And
yeah,
that's that lived in world like you're talking about with the cars and stuff. It's not, it's not taking something and making it look like it's from the period. It's not always taking something from the period,
yeah,
and that's his MO, which is why we like him so much, right?
yeah.
So,
And as far as look, we'll be honest with you. The only negatives really of this movie, I think it like some of his movies, it does have some slow parts.
mm,
But it's a style of movie that you just got to be ready for that. I mean, the slow parts are parts that if you really watch, they're key to the plot.
mm,
They're key to what's going on. If you listen to what's said, if you watch what's going on. So if you're really into the movie and you're focused on it. Now, if you're just wanting something that's gonna, if you're wanting Fast and Furious, this ain't Fast and Furious, okay?
right.
But it's but if you like movies that'll make you think, if you like movies that make uh you realistic that, but yet with the sci-fi tilt to it.
Hmm.
This is a good movie, man. And
Yeah. And
you know,
like I was referred to earlier, the reason I talked about how, my almost 15-year-old nephew sat down and watched me with it is, again, it's not, there's no over the top violence to a point where it's adult only, but yet it's not a kiddie movie either. Like,
yeah,
from 13 to 80 will love this movie. And
yeah,
that's something too, to say that you can have a movie that's got the theme of this movie without it being, go to that place, right?
that's right.
So,
You're exactly right. That's well put. Because and even the scenes that do have some like action, violent type
mm,
stuff are very realistically shot.
mm,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like they're very realistically done.
Hmm.
They're not. It's not a bunch of flashbang Michael Bay movie stuff. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's really it's very gritty, very uh, you know, seems realistic. So,
Hmm.
well, man, it's a great movie. Joey,
Yeah.
let's give it uh we have a rating system of
Hmm.
when you go to a potluck, if it's a good dish, the serving spoons come out, the extra
Right.
serving spoons, because people will grab the serving spoon from another dish and they'll put it in that one because they want it. A lot of people are wanting out of it at the same time.
Hmm.
So we'll go up. What do we go up to? 5 serving spoons.
Hmm.
So what? Well, how many serving spoons do you give this movie?
I think I'd give it a good 3.5. A three and a
Okay.
half.
I'm gonna go 4.
Yeah.
Um, and look, I'm biased.
Yeah.
I'm a Jeff Nichols fan. Okay.
Right.
One of my goals is to someday interview Jeff Nichols about his movies.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, I, I'm a big fan of his. I'm a fanboy. Um, I love his movies. I love the way he writes. I love the way he directs. I just really, I can sit and watch any of his movies and enjoy them.
Hmm.
So I, I'll admit I'm biased on it, but I really do think this is a good movie. And it means a lot that, I think it's a good one. It helps me because there's a lot of times, you know how it is, Joe. We're both the same way. We have movies we like. And then when someone else says, yeah, this is good. So when you watched it and you're like, man, that is a good movie.
Right.
That helps me realize that I'm not an idiot. So, that do have some good taste. So anyway, well, man, anything else, Joe, on this movie you want to throw out there that we haven't said?
No, the only thing I think I could say is, again, if you've got, a teenager, young teenager, sit down and watch it with them.
Mhm.
Because again, it's not just the entertainment value, it's the message, right?
And yes,
If you have a child, it's the message. So sit down there with them, and enjoy the message, but also enjoy the movie, and you're not getting beat over the head with the message. It's just a good watch. It's a good popcorn movie.
and
You know,
then talk about it afterwards. Talk
yeah.
about, like I said, the two things we told you about, the fact that, the driving down the road with the lights out, that idea. But the main thing is the idea about his kid and that he
Hmm.
was going through when he wrote it. And that whole theme, okay,
Hmm.
that's what Joey's talking about there, folks. And when you get through watching it, you'll be, sit down and talk about, well, how did that fit? If you're, like he was talking about with his little nephew,
Hmm.
talk about that theme and talk about, how it fit into the movie and what lessons you can learn from it. Because there are some
Hmm.
the lessons there. And I don't know if Jeff Nichols meant for lessons to be learned from it. I think it was more cathartic for him.
Hmm.
I think it was just him just getting that stuff out there. But man, it's good stuff. So listen, watch it. If you haven't watched Mud, go watch Mud.
Hmm.
Uh some of those other movies, if you watch this movie, if you watch Mud, if you like those, watch Shotgun Stories, watch Take Shelter, watch is it Bikers, the newest one? I've
Yeah.
watched it. It's
Hmm.
pretty good. Um, but that's his more recent one, or Bike Riders. What
Yeah,
is
it's
it?
Bike Riders. Yeah.
Bike Riders. I knew it was a real simple.
Yeah.
title. But anyway, folks, thanks so much for watching and listening to the Movie Potluck podcast. We hope you enjoy. Hope you enjoy this. Go back and check out some of our other ones. We got some other movies we've done. We've had a lot of good people that have, like Peanut Butter Falcon was one we did, and Vengeance and some others that we've got had some people that have watched those and told us they really enjoyed them. So, tell us what you think. Give us some comments, some likes, some shares, all that good stuff.
And stay tuned for some special guests.
That's right.
Special guests.
You heard it. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for watching and listening. Until we talk to you again.
Yeah. Time to eat.
Pop some popcorn and get the potluck out. Here we go, baby. Watching some movies.
The preceding podcast is the sole property of Bear Meats World Media Group, LLC. Any copying, distribution, or use of its imagery or audio without express written consent is strictly prohibited by law.